It's 1933. New York is wet and broke and dangerous, and the only man who could clean it up is sitting in a dark office, not answering a phone that isn't even connected anymore. Spider-Noir is Amazon's 8-episode live-action series set in Depression-era Manhattan, starring Nicolas Cage as Ben Reilly, a man who used to be the Spider, the city's only masked hero, until the night he wasn't. Now he takes whatever cases stumble through the door. Cheating spouses, missing persons, the kind of work that lets him stay close to the ground and far from what he used to be. It shouldn't last. It never does. What pulls him back isn't a villain. It's a case. 2 cases, actually. Neither of which seems like much until they aren't separate anymore. Spider-Noir is a show about guilt wearing a trench coat. It's also frequently hilarious. It holds the darkness and the jokes in the same hand, which is harder than it sounds.
Whoa, not another step.
See? Tai Chi.
Ben's been running from a specific identity for 5 years. That guilt sits underneath every scene, every joke, every case he reluctantly agrees to take. And it's the reason that when this show asks you to feel something, you already do, which puts us squarely in the territory of our first category. Ogami Ito was the shogun's executioner. He held the highest honorable position a samurai could hold, until a political enemy framed him, had his household massacred, and left him with nothing but a sword and a 3-year-old son. He could have pursued revenge directly. Instead, he does something stranger. He declares himself a hired assassin, places his infant boy in a cart, and walks an explicit path toward death. Lone Wolf and Cub is structured as episodic encounters along that road, but the road itself is the story. Ito isn't wandering. He's choosing a particular kind of life in the aftermath of a particular loss, one that keeps him moving, keeps him dangerous, and keeps him just far enough from what he used to be to survive carrying it. Ben Reilly knows that move. The PI office isn't a fresh start, it's a strategy for existing near the thing you can't return to. Both men maintain lethal competence while performing irrelevance. Both are men the world insists on meeting, no matter how clearly they've said they're done. The weight of a former identity? That's what Lone Wolf and Cub isolates, but Spider-Noir layers something else on top of it, the structure of the cases Ben takes. Nothing is what it first appears to be. Every thread connects to something buried, and by the time he realizes what he's actually working on, he's already in the middle of it. That double structure, the case that becomes personal, is the show's other great engine. Ben Reilly takes a job. It looks straightforward. It isn't. What Silvermane's operation turns out to connect to reaches further back than Ben knew, and the further in he goes, the more it becomes clear this was never just a case, it was always personal. That double helix structure, 2 investigations spiraling into one wound, is the defining architecture of noir, and nobody has ever built it better than Chinatown. Film, 1974. Directed by Roman Polanski, written by Robert Towne. Jack Nicholson plays Jake Gittes, a Los Angeles private eye hired to do routine marital surveillance. The job opens into a conspiracy about water rights, political corruption, and a secret at the center of it that makes every prior assumption collapse. Towne turned down $125,000 to adapt A Great Gatsby, accepting $25,000 instead to write this original screenplay. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards. It won 1, Towne's script. What makes Chinatown essential here isn't the plot. It's Gittes' relationship to it. He's smart, he's experienced, he reads people well. And the conspiracy still outruns him at every turn, because the thing he's investigating is bigger and older and more personal than any professional skill can handle. Ben Reilly has exactly that problem. The intelligence doesn't save you when the case was always about you.
Chinatown built its world in sun and dust, but it was always a dark film. Spider-Noir does something even more deliberate. It makes the visual language itself an argument. The choice to offer this show in black and white isn't a stylistic flourish, it's a position. And the film that stated that position most clearly came out 31 years later.
Keep your neck tight, goddammit. Stay conscious. Stay conscious. No alarm. The glass. Cut the rope. You can do it. You can do it.
Sin City doesn't use black and white to look old, it uses it to make a world that couldn't exist in color. Frank Miller's source material was always in stark contrast, ink on page, and Rodriguez and Miller's adaptation makes the same structural argument, that the excess, the violence, the theatricality of this world can only be held together visually if color is stripped down to the moments that earn it. The red dress, the yellow villain, the white of exposed skin in absolute dark. That deliberate restraint, color as emphasis rather than environment, is doing the same work Spider-Noir is doing when you choose the monochrome version. The shadows in 1933 Manhattan stop being atmospheric and start being load-bearing. The moral gray zones aren't a metaphor, they're the only tones available. You can't hide behind saturation, every frame has to justify its composition. Rodriguez's film proved that noir isn't a genre that tolerates color badly, it's a genre that thinks in black and white. Spider-Noir understood that before anyone turned a camera on.
Ben Reilly misquotes film dialogue to his secretary. He does an Edward G. Robinson impression in the middle of a serious scene. He picks fights he probably shouldn't. He is, in the assessment of the Roger Ebert website's review, 70% Bogart and 30% Bugs Bunny, and both percentages are meant sincerely. Spider-Noir is funny. It's also genuinely dark. The question is how it holds both at once. The first episode of Invincible ends with a scene so violent it recontextualizes every laugh that preceded it. But the show doesn't use comedy as false comfort, it earns the comedy so that the darkness lands harder. Mark Grayson is genuinely, naturally funny. His family is warm and specific, and then the show takes a sledgehammer to that warmth. Not as a subversion, but as a consequence. The lightness was never ironic, it was the thing being destroyed. Spider-Noir operates on similar principles. Ben's one-liners aren't deflection, they're character. The humor comes from the same place as his stubbornness, his ethics, his refusal to stay out of things that aren't his business. It's the same trait wearing different clothes depending on the scene. And when the show reaches for genuine darkness, and it does, the comedy doesn't disappear, it just gets quieter. Both shows understand that tone isn't a mood you set and hold, it's a register you play across. Invincible gives you the tonal architecture, but underneath all of it, the retired identity, the converging cases, the monochrome, the whiplash, there's the things Spider-Noir is actually about. Ben Reilly isn't a man who lost a job, he's a man who lost a person, and he believes it was his fault. That guilt is not backstory, it's the whole engine.
There is no corpse. There is no corpse. There is no corpse.
Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli's Born Again is the story of a man who has already lost. Karen Page, once the love of Matt Murdock's life, has sold his secret identity for a fix. Wilson Fisk uses it to dismantle him, not physically at first, but systematically. His bank accounts, his law license, his apartment. The story doesn't begin with Daredevil losing a fight. It begins with Matt Murdock losing everything else because of someone he failed to save long before the page won. What Born Again understands, and what Spider-Noir earns, is that guilt isn't backstory, it's operating logic. Matt's return to heroism isn't triumphant. It's slow, fractured, and almost accidental. The mask comes back because the man underneath it can't stop being what he is. Not because he's healed, because he's constitutionally unable to not show up.
Ben Reilly's arc follows the same groove. He didn't give up the spider because he lost the will to fight. He gave it up because he couldn't survive being the kind of person who failed. Both stories are about men learning painfully that failure isn't a reason to quit. It's the thing that makes the returning matter.
Spider-Noir is a superhero show about a man who doesn't want to be one, set in a city that can't afford the luxury of waiting for him to change his mind. If you liked any part of what it's doing, these 5 reach into the same parts of it. The retired identity, the double case, the frame that thinks in shadows, the tonal tightrope, and the guilt that just won't clock out.